What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of One Question for Every Fight. I'm Spencer Kite, coming to you from the den in the new digs. Still haven't got the office set up. It is right now where laundry is drying. It is a work in progress. I lost some pieces to my desk. This is the real reason. So we got to find those today as we unpack some boxes. But we're set up in the den. We're ready to go. We've got UFC Vegas 59 on Saturday, headlined by Thiago Santos and Jamal Hill. So we're going to get right into it. You know how we do this every week. We go through top to bottom. One question that piques my interest, one thing that I'm looking for to get some answers to on Saturday. So we'll just get to it. Jamal Hill, Thiago Santos. The question is Jamal Hill a contender? We saw last weekend at UFC 277, Magomed Ankalaev come through his fight with Anthony Smith with a decisive second round stoppage win. Injury aside, it's 9 straight for Ankalaev, so we have a good sense of where he fits in the division. Jamal Hill comes into this one with a couple consecutive first-round stoppage wins. The one over Johnny Walker earlier this year, pretty impressive. To go out and do that again this weekend against a former title challenger in Thiago Santos probably puts him in that same range as Ankalaev. It maybe even skips him ahead of Ankalaev, who wasn't, finishing fights before the Anthony Smith fight. Didn't finish Thiago Santos when they fought earlier this year. And I think Jamal Hill has that little bit of an it factor for people where if he does go out and keep putting people away, he can really stamp himself not only as a contender, but maybe jump the line a little bit and get into a bigger fight, an even bigger fight next time out. But we'll see. It's a tough ask. Thiago Santos, for all the shortcomings of the last few fights and for clearly not being the same guy since the fight with John Jones, since the knee injuries, is still a dangerous opponent that you have to be wary of, that you have to be careful with. And so we're going to see from Jamal Hill on Saturday if he's got the ability to put that guy away and stamp himself as a top 5 fighter in the light heavyweight division. Co-main event, Vicente Luque and Geoff Neal in the welterweight division. My question is, can Geoff Neal take another step forward? Neal is one of those Contender Series grads that has had great success overall to climb into the rankings at welterweight. He's in the lower third right now, I believe, just outside of the top 10. He's had a couple opportunities to move forward that didn't go well. The fight with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, then a fight with Bilal Muhammad, I believe. No, Bilal Muhammad was earlier. I can't remember who the second one was, but he had Neal Magny. He had consecutive losses there. One of them, Saif Saud, wasn't in his corner. He was coming back from COVID and major health issues and things like that. He got back into the win column at the end of last year with a win over Santiago Ponzinibbio. And now he gets the chance to face Luque, who is just the perfect representation of what a middle third of the rankings guy at welterweight looks like, right? Super dangerous fighter. Not an easy out for anybody if you do beat him. He's coming off the loss to Bilal Muhammad. He's a guy that can get you in many different ways. If you want to stand and bang, great. If you want to grapple, watch your neck. And this is the fight to me that Geoff Neal, it's not must win because must win is sort of a tough thing to put on somebody. But if he wants to really take a step forward and really start making some progress in this division, this is when he needs to win. This is when he's got to go out there and get, and it needs to be even more convincing, even more decisive than the win over Ponzinibbio, which was a good, close fight and the kind of fight that Geoff Neal tends to get in at this level. I think there's another gear to Geoff Neal. I just don't think he necessarily understands it or agrees with it yet or has found it yet. And I want to see if fighting a guy like Vicente Luque, who is going to come after you, can bring that out of him on Saturday. Next one down, the heavyweight finale for the Ultimate Fighter Season 30. Zach Pauga against Muhammad Usman. My question is, will Mo Usman join his brother in the fraternity of Ultimate Fighter winners? Obviously, his brother, older brother, welterweight champion Kamaru Usman, made it into the UFC by winning season 23, I believe, 22, don't quote me, of the Ultimate Fighter. Team Black Zillions versus Team ATT. Defeating Haider Hassan in the finals, has gone on, obviously, to do great things, undefeated, top of the welterweight division, all of that. Mo's in a tough fight here, and he's had kind of a difficult run through the tournament. He had a very close fight with Mitchell Sipe in the first round, in the quarterfinal round of this tournament. And then in the semis, a similar kind of difficult fight with Eduardo Perez, the top pick for Team Nunes, to get to this point. Whereas his opponent, Zach Pauga, has looked really good throughout. Decisive 2-round win in his quarterfinal fight, and then gets a stoppage over his teammate Jordan Heiderman in the semifinals to get here. Pauga is a natural light heavyweight, so this is going to be an interesting one to see sort of dynamically and physically. Mo Usman is a great big human being, but will be at sort of a speed disadvantage. Power is sort of a toss-up because Mo's he's a big, strong, physical human being, but he doesn't throw a ton, and he doesn't throw a ton with big power on it, or at least we haven't seen it through this tournament. And so it's going to be really interesting. This is a tough fight. I think Zach Pauga is probably the better fighter overall and the better prospect. I think he will go back down to 205 and be somebody that we'll hear from. But there's a big size disadvantage here. There's a big size discrepancy here. And I want to see if Usman's going to be able to, having had several weeks and several months now to prep for this and plan for this, be able to put together a game plan, a strategy to use that physicality and get out there and get a victory and kind of follow the exact same path, or the first few steps of the path that his brother Kamaru took. Women's flyweight fight, the women's flyweight finale, Brogan Walker against Juliana Miller. My question is Miller another young flyweight to keep tabs on? Juju's 26. She entered the competition with just 3 fights, 2 wins and a loss. Lost her last fight going in, but went into the house and avenged that in the quarterfinals, defeating Claire Guthrie with a gutsy effort. Goes into the semifinals and beats Caitlin Neal, looked terrific, played to her strengths, took her to the ground and got a finish with an arm lock. She trains at Team Hurricane Awesome out in San Diego. She has very good jiu-jitsu. She is a scrappy, grimy, gritty fighter for being just 26 years old and as young into her career as she is. But Brogan Walker is the opposite. She's the seasoned veteran. She's the one that has navigated sort of coming through, and she had a tough road as well. She had some tough fights. She dealt with a knee injury in the house, got through a difficult fight in the quarterfinals against Hannah Guy, and then went out and beat Laura Gallardo in the semis to get to this point. She's fought some good competition. If you pull up Brogan Walker's record, she's fought good competition throughout her career and in Invicta and things like that. So she will clearly have an experience edge. But Juliana Miller has just looked like one of those fighters that we see every so often on The Ultimate Fighter that rises to the occasion, and we see they're coming out and we see they're coming into themselves on the show. And I know not a lot of people watch the show anymore and things like that, but trust me when I tell you, as someone that did watch this show, she came into herself in that house. You could see the belief, you could see the growth and development as an athlete and as a human, to where it's going to be interesting on Saturday. Because if she goes out and beats Brogan Walker and moves to 3-1 in her career, but has those fights in the house behind her, she kind of joins at the back of the pack with the Erin Blanchfields and Miranda Mavericks and Macy Barbers of this division that are all starting to come forward at a time when some of the elder stateswomen of the division are starting to slide back. It's going to be really interesting to see. Second heavyweight fight of the main card, Augusto Sakai against Sergey Spivak. My question is, where does Spivak stand? He's a guy that, early in his UFC career got a good win over Tai Tuivasa, a win that has aged exceptionally well. Obviously, we saw Tai take a year off after that fight to reassess and make some changes and figure things out, and he's been absolutely lights out since. He's 3-1 in his last 4 fights. The losses to Tom Aspinall on short notice, which I think we can all excuse a little bit. We can give him a bit of a pass on that one. And so I just want to see if this, emerging, kind of now settled into the UFC, now pretty comfortable where he is and developing who he is as a fighter, can go out there and get past kind of a brawny, not quite brawlery, but just a big, sturdy heavyweight in Augusto Sakai, who I think is perfectly situated for where he is in the division. He comes in on a 4-fight losing streak, or a 3-fight losing streak, excuse me. That's not great, but he's still a top 15 heavyweight for the moment, and sort of that veteran, experienced, kind of tough out for a guy like Spivak, right? He's a perfect gatekeeper and a perfect litmus test for these younger heavyweights that we're going to continue to see climbing through the ranks. And so I just want to see if we can get a little something more out of Sergey Spivak on Saturday that shows us that there is more even beyond this, that he is somebody that can maybe make a move into the top 10, the top 15 first, and then the top 10, because we have seen some positive moments. And if you set aside Tom Aspinall, who up until his knee injury against Curtis Blades was beating everybody, then, you know, we'll see what's coming with Sergey Spivak. Opening fight on the main card, flyweight fight, Ariane Lipsky versus Priscilla Cashwera. And my question is, what does the future look like for Ariane Lipsky? She came into the UFC as the violence queen, the champion from KSW, who had beaten some good competition, fighters that had been in or are now in the UFC, Sheila Gaff, Diana Belbitsa, Silvana Gomez Juarez, who is in the UFC now and coming off a really good win. But she's kind of hit the ground, not running, kind of plodding in the UFC. She had 2 losses, got 2 wins, got 2 more losses, and now is coming in off a win over Mandy Baum, which it just feels like either something shifted coming from KSW to the UFC in terms of she was just athletically superior and, you know, skill superior to those fighters she was facing under the KSW banner. Some of the opponents that she's had in the UFC are certainly a step above where she's at. She debuted against Joanne Calderwood, now Joanne Wood. She's got a loss in there to Antonina Shevchenko. She's got a loss in there to Montana De La Rosa. Those are all sort of understandable against reasonably talented fighters. But Lipsky's 28 now. She's going to do something. If there's going to be a run, if there's going to be a channeling into that success she had in KSW and fulfilling of that promise she showed when she came over, right? Myself and a lot of people were really excited about this woman when she arrived in the UFC, and it just hasn't been there. If it's ever going to be there, she needs to continue building. The win over Mandy Baum gets her moving in the right direction. She gets a chance on Saturday to get a second consecutive victory by going out there against Cashwera, who is beatable but tough, durable, is going to hang around, isn't going to go away quietly. She's going to thumb you in the eye. She's going to do every little dirty, cheaty thing that she can, because we've seen it from her. That's not me being an asshole. We've seen her gouge people's eyes. We've seen her miss weight a couple times, all these different things. If Ariane Lipsky's going to go forward, it needs to start happening. This needs to be the time, or else she's going to just be static where she is, and that's probably not going to mean a long-term future in the UFC. We move to the prelims with everybody's favorite UFC fighter, Sam Alvey, against Mikhail Olasheychak. My question for this one is, how much better can Olasheychak be fighting at middleweight? He's fought his whole career in the UFC to this point at light heavyweight. He now drops down. He had some good wins at light heavyweight, but it was sort of inconsistent, right? For every good win, there was a bad loss. And for every strong performance, there was a very tepid performance. I think he's someone that probably can have some success going down. I love the body work. I love the boxing in general. The movement is good. I think some of what has been the problem for him at light heavyweight is just the size thing. You get in there with a Jimmy Crute. You get in there with an Vincent St. Pro, who are just these bigger human beings that can be more physical than you. And it's tough, right? It becomes one-way traffic. But when he's in there against guys that he can move against, that he can have the speed advantage against, we've seen him have that success. Sam Alvey, for all of his shortcomings, for all of the memes, all the things everybody wants to say, is still a good test, right? He's a measuring stick. That's all Sam Alvey is these days. He's not quite at the professional opponent level where you're going in and it's a guaranteed win. And I know that sounds weird given that Sam Alvey is winless in his last like 8 fights. But there's been some close fights in there. There's been some challenging fights in there. He's had some okay performances where, depending on how you score the fight, it maybe goes in his decision, in his direction. And so this is a good opportunity for Olasheychak to go out there, to get a win in a new division, to show a little bit of what he can do, to show that the weight cut isn't a big issue and he can get down to 85 easily. He's still on the right side of 30 and a guy that I think could maybe put some things together. We'll find out, and we'll see that first up on Saturday night against Sam. Next up, another fighter changing divisions. Bryan Battle drops down to welterweight to face Takeshi Sato. And my question here is very similar. What does Battle look like at welterweight? Last year's Ultimate Fighter winner. At middleweight, he then went out and beat the guy he was supposed to face in the finale, Tresean Gore. But he's always seemed like a guy that was just very similar. And I said it even during last season. He reminds me a lot just physically and in terms of the skill level and where he's at in his development and progression as a fighter to Kelvin Gastelum, where he's a little bit doughy and not quite in the best shape that he could be in fighting at middleweight. We're going to see what happens when he goes down now to welterweight. He's done well in his 2 fights, right? In beating Gilbert Urbina and in beating Tresean Gore, he showed some resolve in the fight with Urbina to get that win in the second round, navigate some rough spots in the first. And against Tresean Gore, he showed that he just understood, I can win on volume. I can beat this guy by just being the more active fighter. But I do think welterweight is a better fit for him, just in terms of size, in terms of the physicality that he's been facing at 85 versus what he may face at 170. Much like Sam Alvey, Takeshi Sato is a great litmus test, right? He came back in London against Gunnar Nelson, landed on the wrong side of the results. It's 2 consecutive defeats, but he is a proven, established fighter that a young kid like Bryan Battle can go out there, test himself against. We'll see a little bit of, probably see some challenging moments, probably see some, not adversity necessarily where he's got to like rally and survive, but he's going to have to work through some stuff. This isn't going to be a fight with another inexperienced guy like Tresean Gore or relatively inexperienced guy like Gilbert Urbina. Takeshi Sato knows who he is, knows what to do, probably has some tricks up his sleeve. And so this will be a good test and a good way to get a feel for what Bryan Battle brings to the welterweight division. Next up, lightweights, Terence McKinney and Eric Ghost Pepper Gonzalez. My question here is, can Terence McKinney show some poise? And what I mean is this. His first 2 fights in the UFC are quick, first round, dominant finishes, right? Matt Frevola gets hit with a 1-2. We're out of here in 7 or 8 seconds. Goes out a year later, not quite a year later, but goes out in his second fight and just runs through Fares Zayam. Then turns around and makes the quick return to action, jumps into a fight with Drew Dober, and comes out in the first round and is at the start of the fight, even because it only went 1 round. Didn't even go a full round. Comes out and he's hell on wheels, right? And he's got Drew Dober hurt, and he's got Drew Dober on the rocks. And he just punches himself out and gets a little too far ahead of himself. And that's where the poise thing comes into me. That to me was a young, inexperienced fighter, not understanding how to dial it back. It's that great Trevor Whitman quote to Justin Gaethje in the Tony Ferguson fight, right? You want to get him out of here, take 10% off, take 20% off. You're hitting him, but you're trying to kill him. And if you stop trying to kill him, you will kill him. You will put him down. Terence McKinney needs to rein things in a little bit to be even more successful. I think he is a phenomenal prospect. I think he has a tremendous upside, but there's still growth that needs to happen. There's still development that needs to happen, because in that Drew Dober fight, he goes out hell on wheels to start, gets Drew Dober hurt, is in great positions, but then just gets ahead of himself and gets reversed on the ground, and Dober gets up and puts him away. It happens. Drew Dober's great. Saying his praises on Monday. Deservedly. Shout out to Drew Dober. But this is one of, and that performance is actually, and I think I said it at the time, a great learning opportunity for Terence McKinney. It is a thing that should teach him where he's missing some stuff. I hope the lesson he learned is that I need to be more patient, because if he can be, I think it increases his upside. If the quicker he picks that part up, the quicker he progresses up the ladder, because the skills are there, the talents are there. I've talked to people that have trained with Terence in the past, including Michael Chiesa, who, as we know, is a ranked welterweight, who says he's a great wrestler and one of the toughest guys he's gone with on the mats. And then we've seen the power from him. We've seen the explosiveness and the striking. And so all the pieces are there for T-Rex to be somebody that has an impact and makes a move in this division, but he just needs to be a little bit more patient, just needs to learn a little bit of poise, and we'll see if he can do that on Saturday against Eric Gonzalez. Next up, welterweights. Jason Witt against Josh Quinlan. My question here is, will Josh Quinlan answer the skill questions? So Josh Quinlan went out on season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series last fall and had a brilliant performance, a first-round stoppage win, pushed his record to 5-0, and a couple weeks later he tested positive for banned steroids. He came out, did the thing that everybody does when they get caught, apologized to everybody, my mistake, whatever. But it calls into question everything, right? Entire career, both amateur and pro, undefeated, lots of finishes. It calls all of it into question. And so Saturday night is really the first chance that we get to see what kind of impact, what kind of influence that those substances, whatever he was using, whether he's still, all of those questions that we always have when somebody pops come to the fore, and he's got to answer them. I thought going into Contender Series and coming out of Contender Series that he was one of the better fighters off that season, sort of in the same line as fellow welterweights, Jack Della Maddalena and Michael Morales, who we've seen both pick up 2 wins. He gets Jason Witt on Saturday, who is a tough Midwest veteran that can wrestle a little bit, that's got a little bit of power, that's going to be a tough test for you if you're not ready for this level, if you're not capable or deserving of being at this level. If the skills aren't there for Josh Quinlan the way that I think they are, and the way that I think we've seen they are throughout his career to this point, then he's going to be found out. It's going to come through. We're going to see that on Saturday if they're not there, because Jason Witt's tough enough, good enough, dangerous enough, durable enough, as we saw in the fight with Brian Barberina a couple of years ago, to go out there and hang with you and make it dirty and put it on you and rally and not die and all of those things. So Josh Quinlan's got some big questions to answer on Saturday. Can he come out and show that while I've made mistakes, I still have the skill and talent to succeed at this level and deserve to be at this level? Or is he going to be one of those guys that suddenly looks dramatically different because he's been found out? We're going to see. Women's strawweight fight, Miranda Granger versus Corey McKenna. My question is, who returns to form? So Miranda Granger has been off for a little over a year now. She gave birth to a baby girl just under a year ago. Corey McKenna fought in London earlier this year, lost the split decision to Elise Reed. Granger comes in on a 2-fight losing skid, I should say. And this to me is just a matter of seeing which one of them returns to that form, as I said, that we've seen from them in the past. Miranda Granger went undefeated on her way to the UFC, winning a title in CFFC, which I have. I hold a belt in CFFC in great esteem. It is a very good promotion. She fought some good competition, Amy Montenegro, Jamie Colleen on the way up. She then came into the UFC and got a unanimous decision win over Hannah Goldie in her debut to move to 7-0. Took a short notice fight against Amanda Lemos on the other side of the world in Busan, South Korea. Not a good idea, but a loss that has aged well. Amanda Lemos seems to be doing okay. She had some medical complications in that fight, and then a loss to Ashley Yoder. McKenna got her way into the UFC with a good win over Vanessa Demopoulos on the Contender Series, then beat Kay Hansen in her debut, and then, as I said, returned in London against Elise Reed. And now it's sort of both come in at that point where they need to prove a little something, right? I don't think this is do or die for either of them. Corey McKenna is still so young that she's got so much time to grow and develop and mature as an athlete and even just as a human being. She just turned 23 last month. Miranda Granger, a little bit older, turned 30. She is 30. She's got, 2 straight losses, but still an opportunity if she can get back to kind of what we saw before the UFC, and even to a lesser extent, the fight with Hannah Goldie, then there's potential there as well, and a chance and room to grow going forward there as well. And so this is just about which one of them comes out and taps into that early and figures out the right way forward early. Miranda Granger is going to have a 10-inch reach advantage in this fight, so I think she'll be looking to strike. Corey McKenna, I think she learned in that fight with Elise Reed, I need to just grapple. I need to be in on my grappling and working inside from the jump. And so we're going to see which one of them is able to implement their game plan and dictate the terms of engagement on Saturday to get themselves moving forward in the right direction again. And then the opener, an intriguing opener to me. Bantamweight fight, Mayra Bueno Silva against Stephanie Egger. And for me, the question is which one takes another step forward? Bueno Silva debuted in the division last time out, got a good, not great win on the scorecards after having some success, moderate success, I would say, at Flyweight. Came out last time, beat Wu Yanan. Stephanie Egger is someone that I think deserves a little bit more buzz than she's gotten. She's 2-1 in the UFC. The one loss is her debut, which came on really short notice against Tracy Cortez. She then defeats Shayna Young, battering her on the ground in the second round. And then earlier this year had a great win over Jessica Rose Clark, where she hits a hip toss and then gets into an armbar, and it's great, right? And of course, because it's a judo throw and an armbar, we had people doing the like, oh, Ronda Rousey. It's not Ronda Rousey, but it's still a lovely finish from a fighter who's now got consecutive victories in the UFC and a 7-2 record overall and has beaten some good competition. Bantamweight, as I say all the time and probably said a bunch going into last weekend's event where the title was on the line, is sort of in that weird spot where there's a chance for some new names to move forward, especially if they can string together 3, 4, 5 victories. And I think the winner of this is going to get a step up in competition and get probably a name that's in that lower third of the top 15 because they're both a little bit older, right? There's not necessarily a need to slow play either of these women. And whoever goes out, and whether it's Bueno Silva moving it to 2 straight wins or Stephanie Egger moving it to 3 straight victories, they're going to get that opportunity. And I just want to see, I want to know which one of them can take that step and will go out and impose their will on the other on Saturday in order to take that next step. That's it for the questions. This card to me is a little bit under the radar. It's very much, as I've been calling them this year, the hangover card, right? There's some good fights here. There's some interesting matchups. There's some interesting names to track, but we're coming off that big high of UFC 277. So it's a little hard to get up. We're in the thick of the summer. So there's Saturday, spending a Saturday indoors when it's beautiful outside and you want to be barbecuing and hanging out with friends or at the pool or at the beach or whatever you choose to do. I get it, but there are some good fights here. And so for psychos like me that want to spend every Saturday in the den watching fights, I'm going to be doing the recaps this weekend for UFC.com. So I will be very much locked in to these fights on Saturday. I think it's going to be an interesting card. I think we're going to get some impressive performances. I think we're going to get some statements. I think this is going to be a weekend where we learn a little more and get some definitive ideas about a few of these athletes on Saturday night inside the octagon. Can't wait till we get there. Until we do, continue taking care of yourselves. Continue looking out for you and yours. Reach out to the people you care about. Let them know you care. All of those things. I care. I appreciate you guys being here. As always, and I mean this, right? I said it 10 days ago now. The Paddy Pimblett message in London is a fantastic message, but you need to know that people are actually there. DMs are always open. Emails available. spencer.kite@gmail.com. DM me on social media. Get at me in the mentions. If you need an ear, if you need a distraction, I'm here. I love you guys for all the support. I love you for watching these things that we're putting out. Appreciate the feedback. Hit me up with some. We've gotten a little bit better. We got a webcam. We got a halo light. We got a mic working properly. Harry's sending me some more stuff. We're going to really kit out the office when it gets ready to roll. But for now, I hope this is good. I hope we're doing okay. Check out the YouTube page, subscribe there, keep following here. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for always tuning in and checking this stuff out. Appreciate you. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you later.